Matte and satin finish vehicles are becoming all the rage lately. We're seeing many options such as different vinyl wraps, of course, and stealth paint protection film out there that can take a glossy vehicle and turn it satin. It can also protect a satin vehicle and still make it satin. But these matte paint finishes are really unique in the industry, and it's nice to see these actually trickle down to some less expensive vehicles. The first matte slash satin vehicle that I ever worked on was a Audi R8 V10 Plus, which was, I believe at the time, a $12,000 to $15,000 paint option. Here on this Ioniq 5, it is only $1,000 for matte paint, and honestly that is quite a deal. So in today's video we're going to show you how to wash your matte or satin finished vehicle and also how to protect it. We're going to talk about two different options and why I think some should go for full paint protection film, spend up and pay all the money, and why some should just stick to a ceramic coating. So welcome back to another out of spec detailing video here from Clear Detailing in Northern Colorado. Let's jump into it. Now I think a lot of people, and rightfully so, really love the finish of a satin finished vehicle. I think they look incredibly nice. You get this kind of modern feel to the car. And in all honesty, from my experience working on matte and satin finished vehicles, the paint quality actually seems quite a bit higher than its given counterpart of a gloss painted vehicle. The finish on these are absolutely beautiful. And again, even for just $1,000 on this Hyundai Ioniq 5, I think it's well worth it. Now, I have seen this though, that a few people, you walk into a Hyundai Kia dealership, you go to pick up an Ioniq 5, an EV6, or even an EV9 or some of their other vehicles, and you go, wow, I really want the matte one. People fill out the paperwork, and then the dealerships go, okay, here's your matte paint kit. This is all the stuff you can only use on your vehicle. And people go, wait, what do you mean? This is different from treating it like a normal gloss painted vehicle? And absolutely yes. Now, this finish can be finicky. So that's why I wanted to make this video, show you guys how to wash it, talk about some protection options, because you do want to put something on here, whether it's a ceramic coating or whether you want to spend up and have a lot of protection for full paint protection film. We'll talk about both of those options and help you guys figure out which one is best for you. Now, one of the negatives with matte or satin finished paint is once you scratch it, it's basically permanently scratched. So you actually have to get it repainted. Let's say you're sitting in a parking lot, somebody turns into you, you can't just polish that out like you normally traditionally could on a gloss painted vehicle. You're actually going to have to get this fully repainted. Now that doesn't mean it's the whole car, but likely what you're going to have to do is get multiple panels actually painted. And what really makes me concerned about having a paint like this from the factory is matching it. And lots of body shops are still having hard times actually matching matte or satin finish paint. Now, the matte paint on here is actually inherently different from gloss painted vehicles. Now, you still have your base coat, your primer underneath that. You also have your color coat, and then you get to clear coat. Now, clear coats on these are relatively the same, but they are a little bit different. Of course, what causes the matte finish on this is actually somewhat of a jagged finish if you look at it under a microscope, where something like a traditional gloss painted vehicle is actually more of a smooth finish on top. So what actually creates the matte finish on there is those jagged kind of peaks and valleys, if you want to think about it on a microscopic level. It refracts the light differently, and that's what creates this surface. So you want to be extremely careful with any sort of products you're putting on this vehicle, because you can actually start to change the finish. If you take a wax, for example, and basically cover up those valleys, if you think about it that way, you're actually going to create a shiny finish. And again, going back to the scratches, if you get a scratch on this, let's say you get some scratches around the door handle here, you can't go in and compound and polish it like you could on a gloss painted vehicle, because you're essentially going to mow down those peaks and bring it down to the valleys, creating a shiny surface. So now let's talk about your protection options. And this is where it becomes a little bit tricky. So if it were me, in my personal opinion, I wanted a matte or satin finish vehicle, what I would personally do is purchase a gloss vehicle and get it wrapped in stealth or satin finished paint protection film. And the reason being is, going back to what happens if you actually damage this car, how are you going to get it repaired? So that is one of those things I don't think a lot of people actually consider is, okay, let's say something does happen to this car, God forbid that happens. Is it ever going to look right after it's been hit, it's been repaired? Are the panels going to match in terms of the texturing, the finish on it? You may get to the point where, like if you get hit in your door, you get these two resprayed, they're not going to match the rest of the panels. So are you actually going to have to get the entire car repainted? It just becomes this real pain in the butt. Now, on the flip side, a lot of you would say, okay, I got a matte or satin finished vehicle for $1,000 here. I can just wrap it in XPEL Stealth or something similar like that in terms of paint protection film. Well, I think that's a cool option. You still run the risk of actually damaging the car because PPF is not impervious to damage. It does help a lot. But then on top of that, you're also spending between $8,000 to $10,000 to do paint protection film. Now, what I said earlier, I do think it's cool that matte and satin has come down line in terms of the price of vehicles. Like again, I was working on, crazy Audis that are $250,000+ fully spec'd up with $12,000 paint. In that regard, throw all the film on it, you got all the money. But for me, these cars like an Ioniq 5, an EV9 even, an EV6, if you're, between that $45,000 to $50,000 for a vehicle, and then you're going to throw 8 to 10 grand in paint protection film on it, does that make sense from a financial point? Because these cars are already depreciating the second you drive them off the lot. Now, let's say you're going to lease a vehicle like this. You want to keep it looking nice. You want to put something on there to maintain it. You don't want to completely destroy this thing because you're going to get dinged for it when you turn it in. What are the other options for protection? And what I would say one of the best options is to do something like a ceramic coating. It is way cheaper than paint protection film, but there are some negatives. It's not going to help against scratches. It's not going to help against rock chips. And if you do get hit, you don't have that paint protection film there to actually protect the paint. So it becomes a little bit tricky. But I think for most people in this kind of price category, my recommendation is actually to go with ceramic coating. Now again, if you're spending thousands of dollars on an Audi or a BMW for just a paint option, throw matte film on it. Or my recommendation, get a gloss car and throw matte film. I hope that makes sense. So it is a little bit different and it's a little cumbersome. That's why I wanted to have this discussion with you guys. If you're considering a vehicle like this, okay, it looks cool, but also consider you're gonna have some money on the back end and you're always having that thing of like, okay, I'm going into a parking lot. What if somebody hits this car? How am I ever gonna get this car repaired? Because most people aren't like me. They like to keep their car for 10+ years, keep it nice. Maybe they're trying to keep it for the lifetime. I don't know. This could be your last car. For me, I like to swap out cars between 2 to 3 years. So I think I would probably be okay doing this. I don't know. Nonetheless, let's get this thing washed and let's talk about how to ceramic coat it. Now, of course, before we put protection on this Ioniq 5 in terms of the ceramic coating, we need to ensure the vehicle's paint is actually clean. The roads here in Colorado have been absolutely disgusting. It's been snowstorm after snowstorm. We've had road salt, mag chloride everywhere. And as you can see, this Ioniq 5 has it all over it. So one of the things we need to consider when washing or matte or satin finished vehicle is, of course, you want to have a safe wash technique. You don't want to be scratching this. Again, if you scratch it, it's permanently scratched until you get it repainted. That's the big annoyance here. Now, next, you want to ensure you're actually using the right product. You don't want to use any soaps that have gloss enhancers in them, that have some sort of polymers, waxes, or even kind of this SiO2 based ceramic coating infused wash. So what we're going to be using here today is Meguiar Shampoo Plus. Now this sits a little bit higher on the pH scale. It is still technically pH neutral, but it slightly skews more towards alkaline. So what we're going to do is basically put our Shampoo Plus in a foam cannon. And with our dry car here, we're gonna basically use this as our pre-rinse. So what we're gonna do, foam the car down, and it's gonna start eating away up all of that dirt, the grime, the road grime, all of the road salts, mag chloride. Then once that is kind of drained off of the vehicle, we're gonna give it a good, healthy pressure wash on there. That's gonna strip off the most initial dirt and grime. Now, of course, you don't want to just come on here with a wash mitt or anything like that, because yet again, you can actually scratch it. So that pre-soak, especially on matte or satin finished vehicles, is extremely important. So once we've got it rinsed down, we're then going to re-foam it and actually start our contact wash. Now, there are multiple ways to do contact washes. I'm assuming a lot of you have probably heard of the 2-bucket wash. Essentially having one wash bucket that is filled with clear water, one wash bucket that is actually filled with soap. What I prefer to do, not only on matte and satin finished vehicles, but gloss vehicles as well, is do what's called the 1-bucket method. Now, the 1-bucket method may seem scary to some of you because, well, you're only using 1 bucket. But the trick here is you use a lot of wash mitts so that you're not basically wiping down a panel, dunking it back into your clear water, into your soap, risking having any sort of little grime, dirt, and debris on there, and putting it back on the vehicle's finish. So in front of me here in my wash bucket, I have about 10 or so of these wash pads here. So once we do one panel, flip it over, do another panel, this is done. And then we grab a fresh, clean one. This is the best way possible, not only on your matte or satin finish vehicle, but your gloss vehicle, to ensure that you are not bringing more contamination in, risking scratches. So now that we understand our soaps, our wash process, our wash buckets, let's get into doing the full decon. So now while we sit here and wait for this to start stripping off all of that, we're just going to get our buckets ready. So over here, again, I have my bucket. We're gonna pour about 1 to 2 ounces of the Shampoo Plus in there. Once this is getting to the point where it's kind of drying out on the vehicle's finish, such as up here, but it's more all over the vehicle, we're then gonna get it rinsed down. But you guys can hopefully see how much crud this is actually already just stripping off without even touching it. And that is really the name of the game here. Let your products do the work for you. So again, back here, you can really see all the dirt and grime that it's actually stripping out of there. Now, what you'll see is back here, since this isn't protected, you can still see quite a bit of that grime on there. So that's where the rinse comes in. That's basically your first initial agitation. So this just goes on here to kind of loosen everything up. Then when we go through and pressure wash it, it'll very much help get all of that stripped off before we ever even touch it. So let me let this sit for a few more minutes here. Then we'll get to rinsing. We'll refoam this down and start our contact wash. So we're now getting to the point where you can see most of the soap is starting to dry up, and of course the top areas. One thing I should have mentioned with this that I totally forgot about, please make sure you're not doing this when it's 90 degrees outside and you're in the direct sun. You're gonna water spot the heck out of this and you're gonna have a massive nightmare on your hands. So this has been sitting, I don't know, for about 4 to 5 minutes maybe. So now it's time to rinse. We're gonna rinse from top down and just make sure we get all of the soap off and get in there a little bit. So what I like to use is a 40-degree tip on here. This is going to decrease our pressure slightly, but give us a little bit more water. And that's gonna help get all the dirt, especially out of nooks and crannies, like in between window seals and even a little bit of the door jambs as well. This is the best way forward. We've gotten our first initial rinse done, and I hope you guys can tell how much nicer this thing is looking by just doing our pre-soak and then letting that dwell and rinsing it off. It's truly crazy how much this actually helps instead of just going on there, rinsing it, foaming it, and doing it that way. This really helps strip off all of that dirt. Now, one thing that is a little bit tricky with matte and satin finish vehicles is contamination. And contamination, we're talking about iron deposits. Now, this is the same thing if you've been paying attention to news articles talking about Cybertrucks rusting. They're not actually rusting. This is a thing that happens on all vehicles, and they are iron deposits. Now, this comes from two main things. You have industrial fallout, you have rail yard dust, and then you also have it from areas like brake dust and roads. So actually 4 different ways that this happens. Essentially, little iron particulates get clogged into the surface of the paint. Now, on Cybertruck, it really makes them look nasty because the stainless steel makes it look a little bit more corrosive. This also happens on glass painted vehicles as well, especially on white cars. You'll see down the sides and the whole back in there will actually get these really nasty bright orange deposits on them. Now, traditionally, in painted surface vehicles, what you would do is either go in there and clay bar it, or you would compound and polish it. So when I'm doing a brand new car, I typically don't clay bar it because clay bars will actually mar the paint, and it actually comes out by just doing your compound and polish. So it makes it all nice and easy. I'm going to be doing a video on that soon. The trick here is you, for one, can't compound and polish matte or satin finish paint. And number 2, you can't clay it either. So you can't do it mechanically, but you can do it chemically. So these little spots that I'm talking about are areas like this. Hopefully you can see that. Basically, it's a little deposit of iron that is just sitting there. Now this, again, can come from brake dust. It can come from the roads. It can come from when these cars are transported from the port to the dealership on a train or something like that. Hence why we call it rail yard dust. Now, normally, if it's not too bad and the car was kind of covered on the top half, what you're going to see is likely down the side here and around the back end. Now, this happens quite a bit from your brake dust. It also happens from exhaust coming up on the back. Since this is electric, you don't have it quite as bad. But back here, I can definitely open this up here and show you at a little bit better angle a few little areas. Now, of course, this is stuff I don't want to lock in with the ceramic coating. You can see just little marks all around the back of this. So since we're not able to actually clay bar this or compound and polish it, what do? Well, we grab a chemical like this. This is Iron Buster from P&S, and there's actually quite a few products that do the same thing. Something like CarPro Iron X does this as well. Basically what it does is goes in there and reacts with those iron particulates and actually pulls it off the paint. Now, this is the same stuff you can use on really nasty wheels with a lot of brake dust, like Mercedes, Audi, Porsches, to get that bright kind of brown orangish dirt off. This is great for removing that stuff. So what I would recommend you do is basically before you refoam this, check your vehicle over and make sure that if you do have spots, we're addressing them as is. So what I would recommend you do at this stage now is basically spray down the car, especially in the areas you have it. Now, you'll also notice areas you don't have it. And then what you can do on top of it is refoam it again and start your contact wash. I think what we'll do in a few areas here, I'm just going to spray it directly on the paint here so you guys can see how it reacts. And yes, it is safe to do this on matte or satin finish paint. Please make sure you do not do this outside and let this stuff dry. This will wreak havoc on this stuff. So make sure you're doing this when it's cool, and yeah, please don't let it dry. So let me show you that here quickly. Iron Buster here, what I'm going to do is spray this directly on the paint liberally. Now, you're gonna let this sit for a little bit. Again, you don't want this to dry. Now, I'm gonna let this sit and I'm gonna show you what the chemical reaction actually looks like, what it does on the paint, because what it should do is what it's already doing. And you can see it turns bright purple and is actually starting to strip those off. Now, it's not completely everywhere. This is quite a fresh car, but this, again, instead of mechanically going in there and removing those spots, is going to chemically get in there and remove them. So I'm going to let this sit. We'll see how purple it turns. We're going to rinse this off. I just wanted to show you a demonstration before foaming it, because of course, if it's not too bad, you're not going to see all of this. So I'll bring you in a little bit closer as this has been sitting. First off, you can see how it's turning bright purple here, but every single one of these little specks is little iron deposits, and all over the back here, you can just start to see them, and it's basically bleeding all of this off. Let me zoom in here and you can really see what those look like. Those are all embedded into the actual paint here. And again, normally on a painted vehicle like my Model 3 over here, what you would do is go in and clay bar that. Now, if you get it on a perfectly coated car and you try and go back in and clay bar it, you're actually going to mar the finish. So what you do instead is use a product like this. And the nice thing about having a ceramic coating is these aren't going to get embedded as easily, nor are they going to stick on there for quite as much. So all of these are going to be able to basically wash off. Now, again, what I like to do with this product is actually go around the car right after a rinse stage, basically do the entire car with this, foam it, and then we're going to come in and actually agitate it. So we're now actually using both chemical and mechanical removal of the actual iron deposits. So that's a little trick for a lot of you guys, especially on matte or satin finish vehicles. Down here you can see quite a bit as well. I also sprayed this fender over here, and you can see that big spot is almost completely eaten away now. You can see a few small more little spots there, and you can actually see it there on the satin trim. Pretty cool stuff. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to quickly rinse that off real quick. I'm going to do the rest of the car and then refoam it, and we'll actually start washing this thing. Well, I've gone through now and done all of the iron buster all over the paint, all over the lower trims as well. And then we've refoamed it again with our Shampoo Plus. Now, the keen viewer will notice here that we have two buckets and only talked about using one. What the blue bucket is going to be is our dirty or contaminated wash rags here. So we're going to grab our wash pad. I'm going to show you how I would normally do this. Now, normally I'd start on the hood, but we're going to start on the side. So what I like to do is wash top down. So I'm going to get all the areas like the mirrors here, and I'm going to keep it on one side. So once we get all the way to the bottom, then we're going to flip this over, and we have a fresh clean side to start here. I'm going to flip, come back over to this side here. I always like working in straight motions. A lot of guys I'll see do that. I'm not a big fan of doing circular motions. Now, again, one of the cool things here with doing that iron buster with the foam over it, it's not going to let it dry as quickly. So naturally, you're going to have a little bit more work time with this, and it's going to let the product do its thing. So you guys notice there, I got that lower half. That one is actually done. So then I come in, grab a fresh one, and go to town. This also speeds up your washes, especially if you have to wash outside. It's maybe a little bit breezy. This is actually going to make your wash go a lot quicker. So it actually really does help. Then I'm just going to continue around the car. So I have a fresh side here. I can even come to up here. Wash this full front fender. And boom, that's actually done. So I'm going to spend a few more minutes doing the rest of the car here. Then we'll get this rinsed off and we'll talk about drying. So drying time now. And what I would normally grab, let's say I've got my whole Ioniq 5 here already coated and I'm doing a wash. In case you're watching this video, like, how do I wash my matte painted vehicle? What I would use for a drying aid, which is going to help pick up the water, is something like Adam's waterless wash. You want to stay away from like detail sprays that have heavy polymers in them. Waterless wash has great lubrication in it. The point here though is I want to make sure the paint has nothing on it before we coat it, because if we are leaving something behind, what's going to happen? Well, of course, the coating is actually not going to bond quite as well. So what we're going to do instead is just dry this. The paint should be fully decontaminated now. It's crazy after rinsing this off how much of that stuff we got off by just simply spraying it on there and doing our normal wash. So very highly recommend all that. So any of the towels that I recommend are always the Rag Company drying towels. They make, in my opinion, the best drying towels. And no, not sponsored. I pay full price for all of them. That's just what I use here at the shop. So now you're just going to spend some time, go around the car, dry it off. Now you want to make sure when you do this that the car is actually clean. You don't want to, of course, still have dirt remaining in areas and be scrubbing this, since we don't really have that much lubrication. Now the water does add a little bit of lubrication, of course, but we're just going through here, picking up all the water. So I'm going to spend a few minutes doing this here. Then we'll get it into the detail bay and we'll focus on our prep for our coating and actually start getting this ceramic coated. Now that we've got the car washed, decontaminated, and dried, we are now ready to ceramic coat the vehicle. Now, before we actually coat it, there is one more step, and that is using a panel prep spray. Now, panel prep sprays are extremely important in the world of ceramic coatings. This ensures that your coating is going to actually bond to the surface you're trying to coat. So you want to make sure there's no oils left over, there's no soap residue, there's nothing left on the surface, and that's what this is intended to do. This is really meant for removing polishing oils off normal gloss painted vehicles, but still nonetheless extremely important to use. So I'll show you how to do this. And then let's talk about our coating we're going to be using today. Now, the interesting thing, I think a lot of people are going to be confused seeing this coating sitting here in front of me, is why I'm not using the Dr. Beasley's kit that actually comes with the Hyundai Kia cars. Now, over my professional career, I've actually tried this coating in the past, and I was a little underwhelmed in my personal opinion about the longevity of it. I think the application is okay. It's actually a coating that goes on while the car is wet, or you use water to apply it. It's a little strange in my opinion, so I prefer to use something else, something that's going to last a little bit longer. So what we're going to be installing today is Clean by Pan the Organizer's 8-year ceramic coating. Now he has a 3-year and an 8-year. The price difference is $50, so this is $149 for a bottle. I do have an affiliate link in the description below to save you 10% off of Pan's coating here, and for the 3-year, it's $99. So in my opinion, if you're going to spend the time to do it, just buy the more expensive one. Now the cool thing about this coating is it goes on everything. This is made for normal painted vehicles. You can also coat PPF with it. You can coat vinyl with it. You can coat matte painted vehicles, glass, wheels, plastic trim, basically everything on the exterior of your vehicle. So it's a really versatile coating, and the cool thing here is all of these satin fender flares, bumpers, all the gloss painted areas we can coat with this too. Now I've used a couple other matte coatings out there in my career. I've used Decon Matte being one of them, a few others from G-Technics and the likes, and this one seems to be the best to me. It goes on extremely nice, and I think it's going to have the longest durability possible. Most matte paint coatings are around a 2-year lifespan. With Dr. Beasley's, on the couple that I did, have actually lasted less than that. Again, this is my opinion. If you guys disagree, you want to use the stuff that comes with your car, totally cool. But I would prefer using a little bit stronger coating that's actually going to really help protect the surface. So that's what we're going to be using. In front of me here, I have 2 sets of towels. So this is going to be our towel for our panel prep. These are the Rag Company Eagle Edgeless 300s. And then over here, 2 more of those to do our coating install. Now, Pan's coating actually comes with a coating applicator, which I don't like in the box. So I like these auto fiber coating savers. The cool thing about these is they actually have a hydrophobic barrier in between the microfiber on top and the foam in between, so that it's not soaking up all of your coating. You're not wasting that sitting on the surface, and that's going to be applied to the vehicle. Now the coating here You can easily do an entire car with one bottle. You can do all of the paint, all of the trim, all the glass, and probably even the wheels with one bottle here. So it's really nice. Now, this customer is only wanting to do the matte painted finish on the vehicle. He actually didn't even need or want the plastics done. I'm gonna do it because it actually makes my job a little bit easier to do it all at once. So let's get into panel prep spray. We'll get into coating. So we have our panel prep spray ready to go here, our Eagle Edgeless 300 ready to go. So what I'm gonna do is mist this on one side, and I'm gonna give a spray here onto the actual paint. What you should be feeling is a very smooth surface. If you're feeling like it's kind of gritty and kind of pulling the towel, you did not decontaminate this enough. So do keep that in mind. So you wanna be very liberal with this. You just want to work it into the surface. And the great thing with this product is it flashes off the surface extremely well. So I can come back with my dry side and dry this out. Now, anytime you are working with matte paint, please make sure you are using new or extremely clean towels. Again, you don't want to scratch this. Now, what I recommend doing with this, do the whole car. Don't do this panel by panel and then try and coat the hood and then go to a fender or a bumper. Do the whole thing with your panel prep spray, let it dry, then come back and start coating. Now, a recommendation I have, do this step twice. That's gonna help ensure we've got everything off the surface in case you miss a spot. Let's say I'm wiping up here and I totally missed this corner. When I come back for that second time, I'm ensuring that I'm getting all of that off. It's gonna give a chance for this to actually get all of the surface contaminants off of there if there is any left. So I'm gonna spend a few minutes here, go around the car, then we'll come back and talk about how to do the coating. So we are fully prepped, ready to go for our ceramic coating. So I'm gonna show you this little tiny section. This would be a great section to start on for your Ioniq 5 if you're doing this at home. Now we're gonna grab our coating over here and our applicator. Now you can see on the applicator, that's about how much I would put on the applicator to start off. Now, one thing, pan, please fix the applicator top on here. This is impossible to get out of the bottle. You are just sitting here just doing this, trying to get it out of the bottle. It's really, really frustrating. So what we're gonna do here is we're gonna start applying in a straight motion. So what I like to do is kind of get a big, thick amount of ceramic coating on there and then start working it in. Now you can work crosshatch if you'd like. I really like to work in kind of a straight line, single line pattern and just make sure it is super even throughout. So I just applied a little bit more here. I want to get this pretty darn thick on here. So I'm just going to work this in here. Now, the big thing with ceramic coatings that people freak out about is basically having a terrible job. And that is very easily done if you don't really follow steps. So, of course, here when you're applying this coating, you want to make sure you're in a good temperature. You don't want it to be crazy hot. You don't want it to be 95 degrees in your garage, nor do you want it to be like 10 degrees in your garage. So there's an operating window with that. So now that we've applied this, we want to wait a little bit for the coating to actually flash or cure on the surface before we start wiping it off. Now, every coating is different. Every temperature, every humidity changes this amount of time. So you can have a coating that flashes extremely quick, like something like Geon Mo's Evo, Geon Infinite Base Type 1, that is literally 15 seconds worth of flash time. This is around 1 to 2 minutes. Now, I like to push my coatings a little bit to give them the maximum amount of time to actually bond to the surface. So I'd probably be on that 2-minute mark. Now, with this coating, you do have flexibility, so you can really go up to 5 minutes or so on it. Now, on normal painted surfaces, what you're looking for this to do is actually start to rainbow a little bit. Now, all coatings will have some sort of indication of when they're ready to come off. This one rainbows. Some coatings sweat, some coatings rainbow, it just very depends. So what I would recommend doing, start in a small section. If this is your first time, you're trying to do this at home, test it out in a small area. Don't try and do the entire hood in one go because you're going to freak yourself out. So what I would do is do this small section, wait about 2 minutes and see how it feels. And then you can adjust as you go throughout the car. So I'm gonna let this sit here for a few more seconds, and then we're gonna get to wiping here, and I'll show you how easily this coating comes off. This has now been sitting for the extended period of time, and we're gonna wipe away in a circular fashion here. Now, what I want you to keep in mind is you're really trying to make sure you don't get high spots. So let's quickly talk about what a high spot is. Let's say I'm wiping this, and I leave this leading edge to dry and cure. That is what is called a high spot. So the coating is basically sitting above. Now, the issue with this is if this cures on matte paint, you're basically screwed. So that is one of the tricky things with this. On polished paint, you can come back in here and remove this. If you leave this and notice it 2 weeks later, it ain't coming off. There's no way to get it off because normally you would just go in there and polish it. So please be diligent when you're doing this. So what I always do when I'm coating a vehicle is the other areas like up here on the hood, I'm actually gonna wipe above this. I'm also gonna wipe down here, and I'm also gonna wipe down here, ensuring that I'm not leaving high spots. So now that I've got my first towel, I'm gonna go to my second, and what you should be feeling here is absolute butter smooth soft with this coating. It is so unbelievably slick, where this just has kind of this tacky feel. Now the important thing here, you'll notice, it didn't make it any shiner. It didn't change the finish. That's what you're looking for in a paint coating for matte surfaces. And it goes on unbelievably easy. Now, the really cool thing with this coating is you can do all this plastic trim at the same time. So why I was saying this would actually help me is when I get down to areas like this, instead of trying to keep it off of the trim, I can just go right over it. Now, my main focus here first is to get the matte paint actually done, then I'll come back to the trim. But the cool part is, if I get this on here, it's not a big deal. I'll come back over it later and actually coat that section. So it's actually very straightforward to coat your matte painted vehicle as long as you take these tips into consideration. So just work slow, don't get ahead of yourself. Now, what I would probably do, because I'm used to this coating, I've done it multiple times, is probably do the entire hood. And then I would probably do the entire door in this little section. And then while that's probably about a minute into curing, I would start coating this section, then I would start wiping this off, and then I would probably start coating this section and then wipe this off. You just get the gist of it. You can start flying around with this coating once you really get used to it. So that is how you coat the matte paint here. I'll probably show you a few more clips of what it looks like. It's pretty cool when you get half of the hood done and it's glossy on one side, you wipe it off, and then boom, it just goes back to this perfect natural finish on here. Now, for a larger surface like the hood here, I'm going to show you how I would normally do this. So I'm going to split this into quarters. I'm going to kind of border this, and then I'm going to work this in. Now, what you'll notice here is I'm basically picking up coating from the top and bottom, which is going to help get this really nicely spread out. The big things you want to have with coatings are very even coatings. So I'm going to come back and cross hatch this. You'll see it's gonna really look nice and smooth. Now, in the emblem here, you can go right over this. That's the cool thing about these applicators, you can really get in there. So while that's curing, I'm gonna continue coating. So just keep a clock in your mind around 2 minutes. You don't need to be super diligent with that. It's not like it hits 2:01 and oh my gosh, this thing needs to come off. Just keep that in mind. Now what I like to do with this particular coating here is actually put it on relatively thick. Again, we're trying to give the maximum amount of protection here. We're really not that worried about the surface looking uneven with this coating because it goes on so darn smooth. But it is really cool to see it half and half, looking glossy, looking matte. And this is about real-time speed of how I would do it here at the shop. And as you notice, I'm kind of overlapping 50-50 here. So I'm making sure that I'm getting all the areas evenly coated, getting that coating really spread out nicely. Maybe able to even tell here how the emblem is really starting to kind of rainbow in there. That's kind of a good indication that your coating's ready to come off. So it's really nice when you have areas that are shiny like that, you have a real good idea of when it's supposed to come off. But I'm going to continue up here on the top section of the hood. So when I start to see it get a little bit light there, I'm just gonna apply a little bit more coating to my applicator and work it in. Now I would probably also do this side. Again, this coating is something I'm really familiar with. So for me, it's not that scary, of course. I've probably coated, I don't know, 800 to 900 vehicles in my detailing career. So I'm pretty used to how this goes at this point. Honestly, not much really scares me. So looking pretty darn good there. It's crazy to see this glossy, isn't it? I hope you guys can see this on camera, but you notice how this side is kind of doling out and how this is still shiny over here. So this is ready to come off. So I'm gonna come in here with my towel, get to wiping, hit this badge about 50-50. Maybe I'll just do the whole thing. It's all good. And we're just gonna work that in. Now, I'm not a big fan here of wiping my coatings like this. I feel like, especially on matte, you wanna make sure it's really even. So I actually like to work in a circular motion. Now, I'm not putting a ton of pressure on this. All I'm doing is just trying to pick it up. Now, the first time you do this, you'll notice that your towel is gonna pick up a lot. Once your towel starts to get kind of clogged with a bunch of coating, you're gonna start to notice you're kind of pushing it around, if that makes sense. So your first level, which is what this first wipe is called here, you're not trying to pick everything up. So as you can see, I'm really gently wiping and there's still quite a bit of smear on there. So I flip this over, now I can go back and pick all of that up there, and it's not a problem whatsoever. It just kind of very nicely blends in. It's amazing how slick this coating is. It's just like crazy on this surface here. And you come back, you want to make sure you get all these corners. So what I always like to do is have my towels folded in quarters. This is a big thing I say in every video because I see so many people make this one huge towel when you basically now have 8 sides if you fold it like this. So just make sure you're wiping, again, making sure you're getting into the headlights, those adjacent areas, and just wipe this off. Double check your edges, and it looks perfectly smooth. Looks so darn nice. So now we'll come back over here. As I can see, this is already starting to haze up here. Now I hope you guys can really tell how easy this coating comes off. You're not fighting it. There's a bunch of coatings out there in the industry, what I call honey coatings, meaning that you are just feeling like you're wiping off honey on the surface of the car. I really hate those. What I like to feel is a slick coating like that, to where it just kind of blends into the surface and feels unbelievably smooth. You'll notice you want to make sure here, I've got a little bit more product here in the middle, so I want to make sure I come back and wipe that. Not a big deal. It's going on really nice. Yeah, I can still see some splotchiness here, but again, that's our first wipe. Totally okay to leave that. Always make sure you wait till your second wipe to kind of judge that. If you are getting splotchiness, what you probably did is left it on there a little bit too long. So just gonna continue wiping here. These edges are a little tricky in this kind of impression here. Make sure we get that. I'm going to grab my other towel over here. I'm going to start wiping the middle. So, and essentially you have 4 different times you're wiping this surface with your towels here. So I've flipped that back over, and this is my last final wipe. And it looks absolutely perfect. Perfectly smooth, back to perfectly matte. Didn't change the finish whatsoever. It's just got this kind of rich, silky look to it. It looks unbelievable. So I'm of course gonna spend a little bit of time here doing the rest of the car. But yeah, once this is done, I'll show you the end results And that's our video. We are finished up now here coating the Ioniq 5, and man, does this thing look nice. In all honesty, it doesn't look all that much different from what you guys just saw beforehand, but now she's fully protected and the paint just feels incredible on here. It's silky, silky smooth, super slick. So one thing that I really love about Pan's coating here is it actually cures a lot quicker than most ceramic coatings. So in fact, within 1 hour of actually coating the vehicle, it can then get wet, which is kind of unheard of in all honesty. Most coatings are between 7 to 14 days. They really recommend, not driving them out in inclement weather. But the cool thing here, an hour after this is coated, boom, it can go right outside of the shop. It can go through rain, it can go through snow, and it's not gonna affect it. Now, ideally, I always like to push it as much as possible. So the great thing is this car is going to sit here overnight. So it'll be about, 12 to 18 hours. I'm not sure when the customer is going to come pick this up tomorrow, but it'll be really cured up. And the great thing also, just 12 hours into this, you can actually wash it with the pH neutral shampoo. 7 days is full 100% cure on this. So really love that about this coating. Now we went through about half a bottle or so, basically doing all of the paint here, all of the trim, all the way on the side, wheel arches, everything like that. Really made my life easy not having to kind of not do those. So it was one of those things I'm like, let's just get her done. But yeah, this thing looks absolutely stunning. So before we end off this video here, I want to insert some clips of what the water behavior looks like. So tomorrow I'll actually, when I get here, spray some water on this so you guys can get an idea of what kind of water behavior you're going to see. Now again, keep in mind it's not fully cured, but you'll be able to see some of the amazing water behavior on here. Now, a lot of people are going to probably ask, are you actually going to get 8 years out of this? And that really depends on you. Are you going to actually wash your car? Are you going to maintain it? Or are you going to be one of those folks that puts a coating on there and washes their car every 6 months? If that's you, you're going to get a whole heck of a lot less lifetime and durability out of this. So I would say with this, as any coating, you always want to maintain, wash the car. It's going to help give the coating the best chance to last the longest period of time. So next is kind of our maintenance. What do we do for this car? Well, you wash it with the pH neutral shampoo, and that's about it. Don't go crazy with it. You don't really have to go crazy. Nice thing now is it's really protected from water spotting, from bird droppings, from bugs, and all that stuff will wipe away easy or wash away easy, and it's unbelievably nice. So thanks so much for watching another out of spec detailing video here with the Ioniq 5. Man, I love the satin paint on this thing. It looks so darn nice. We'll see you in the next one soon. Bye-bye.